Good afternoon to everybody who's already joined us. We're just going to wait a few minutes for those still joining, and our session will start in a few minutes. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon to everybody who's already joined us. We're just going to wait a few minutes for those still joining, and our session will start in a few minutes. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon to everybody who's already joined us. We're just going to wait a few minutes for those still joining, and our session will start in a few minutes. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon to everybody who's already joined us. We're just Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephanie Botha, and I am from Brain Gain Neurofeedback. Welcome to our first online conference, and this is also our first international conference. Due to COVID, it was really difficult to organize our annual conference, and we are doing everything online this year. So a new beginning for us. It's completely good afternoon, strange everyone. And new for me. So if we look a bit nervous, it is because I am extremely nervous. We have representatives tonight from all of the provinces in South Africa, and we also have people joining us from Dubai and Namibia, and I want to really extend a warm welcome. And I'd like to introduce to you our guest speaker for today. I'm Charmaine Botha, sitting to my left, probably showing on your right on the screen. It's such a great privilege to be able to have this platform today where we can teach about the young children that we work with today. I would like to introduce Charmaine, and you know, if I have to think of Charmaine, I think if ever there should be an award that should go to someone, it should be the Go-Getter of the Year award to Charmaine Botha, because she is a visionary. She sees opportunities wherever she goes, and with 26 years experience in ECD, as a trauma counselor, educator and businesswoman, who better to talk on our topic today, early childhood beginnings or development. And she's going to talk about the early years, starting right at the start. What can happen? What can go wrong? What can we do to prevent further on, or the wheels coming off further on? So thank you, Charmaine, for hosting our webinar as part of our Brain Gain conference this year. I know that what you're going to speak about today is going to be life-changing. Enjoy, everyone. I just want to say that you are welcome to leave comments in the comments or the chat box. Ask your questions, and it's going to be as interactive as possible. Not you just listening. I would love to hear from you, and I will pose your questions to Charmaine as we go along.
Thank you so much to Stephanie Botha. Stephanie is also
enjoy, everyone. I just want to say that you are welcome to leave comments in the comments or the chat box. Ask your questions, and it's going to be as interactive as possible. Not you just listening. I would love to hear from you, and I will pose your questions to Charmaine as we go along.
And that is why I'm so grateful, Stephanie, that you've given ECD a platform where we actually also can talk about the early years. I think that's where we're going to have to start, is just a small explanation. What is ECD? The word ECD stands for Early Childhood Development, and besides it being early childhood development, it is about children the ages in vitro till 9 years. So it tells us at the end of the day that before this baby even is born, there's a responsibility from all of us that have to, from the mommy and from... The word ECD stands for Early Childhood Development, and besides it being early childhood development, it is about children the ages in vitro till 9 years. So it tells us at the end of the day that before this baby even is born, there's a responsibility from all of us that have to, from the mommy and from... The word ECD stands for Early Childhood Development. And besides it being early childhood development, it is about children the ages in vitro till 9 years. So it tells us at the end of the day that before this baby even is born, there's a responsibility from all of us that have to, from the mommy and from... The word ECD stands for Early Childhood Development. And besides it being early childhood development, it is about children the ages in vitro till 9 years. So it tells us at the end of the day that before this baby even is born, there's a responsibility from all of us that have to, from the mommy and from... The word ECD stands for Early Childhood Development. And besides it being early childhood development, it is about children the ages in vitro till 9 years. So it tells us at the end of the day that before this baby even is born. Alright, sorry everybody, I trust that the sound issue has been sorted out. If somebody would just comment in the comment below just to say if the sound is now okay. See, I really wanted you to hear me very well, so I did it double apparently. There's an echo. Early childhood development is about children 0 to 9. That means in vitro while mommy is pregnant and there's the baby has been conceived until 9 years, where normally they then move on from grade 3. So today I have come up with the topic. Stephanie guided me on this. And I realized that in many ECD centers, in many schools, in many creches, in many day mother care groups, the biggest problem is that we don't know where to start. So I would like to take you to our next slide. And this might put a little bit of a focus on what my topic is today. Stephanie guided me on this. So all good stories have a beginning. So let's start there at the very beginning. Day mother care groups. The biggest problem is that we don't know where to start. So I would like to take you to our next slide. And this might put a little bit of a focus on what my topic is today. Stephanie guided me on this. So all good stories have a beginning. So let's start there at the very beginning. Day mother care groups. The biggest problem is that we don't know where to start. So I would like to take you to our next slide. And this might put a little bit of a focus on what my topic is today. Stephanie guided me on this. So all good stories have a beginning. So let's start there at the very beginning. Day mother care groups. The biggest problem is that we don't know where to start. So I would like to take you to our next slide. And this might put a little bit of a focus on what my topic is today. Stephanie guided me on this. So all good stories have a beginning. So let's... Okay, goodness, we have gremlins in our studio this evening, so I trust that our problem is resolved now. I think our sound technician is saying that everybody's saying they can actually hear. So as I was saying, all good stories have a beginning. So let's start at the very beginning. I want you to imagine, so close your eyes and think with me. You're sitting in a classroom and you are listening to a story. Once upon a time, dum dum dum, and the sperm and the egg joined, and a beautiful, unique, one-of-a-kind baby was born. It looked like a baby. It pooped like a baby. It slept like a baby. It even sounded like a baby. But this baby was special. This baby was more than special. This baby was super special. And this is my point. Every child born is super special. Although they have the same characteristics, each baby is different. They are far from exactly the same. And that is why this evening we are going to be talking about language development. And we want each one of you and every educator out there, every parent, every brain gainer out there to know why it happens the way it does, how does it happen, and what now. As Steph actually said, the things that we're going to discuss are things that could be solved. They are red flagged in our schools, we see them in our schools, and then at the end of the day, we want to resolve and solve those problems. And many times the teachers or the facilitators don't know how to do that. So hopefully together, we'll be able to resolve that question. Just something that you need to remember. First of all, every child is an individual, so they're not the same. They have different backgrounds. They are growing up in different environments. They have different circumstances that surround them. And they are still developing. Very many times we are seeing currently in many of the preschools that the children are being pushed too much. Steph, you agree?
I do.
So they are getting information that their brain cannot even compute yet. And this is what's causing all of these delays. And then last but not least, if you want to reach them, you've got to go find them where they are. So those are the three things that I would like to focus on today, just to make sure that every single person that's viewing this webinar today sits back and takes roll call of the way they present their classes, the way they work with their children, the way they identify the problems in their classrooms, and then finding a resolution or a resolve for those problems. So if we could move on to the next slide. In this slide, I am going to be sharing a very, very short video clip with you. I would like to give credit to UNICEF. They're an international organization, and they actually did this video, and it's on serve and return. And the reason why I'd like this specific video to be shared with all of you is sometimes we think that language can be developed in front of a screen where children are watching, or they've got screen time, they're watching a television program. But scientifically, at the end of the day, there is interaction that needs to take place in our classrooms, at home, whatnot. So I'm going to ask our technician if he would please just share this serve and return brain interaction video with everybody.
The key to forming strong brain architecture is what's known as serve and return interaction with adults. In this developmental game, new neural connections form in the brain as young children instinctively serve through babbling, facial expressions, and gestures. And adults return the serve, responding in a very directed, meaningful way. It starts very early in life, when a baby coos and the adult interacts and directs the baby's attention to a face or hand. This interaction forms the foundation of brain architecture upon which all future development will be built. It helps create neural connections between all the different areas of the brain, building the emotional and cognitive skills children need in life. For example, here's how it works for literacy and language skills. When the baby sees an object, the adult says its name. This makes connections in the baby's brain between particular sounds and their corresponding objects. Later, adults show young children that those objects and sounds can also be represented by marks on a page. With continued support from adults, children then learn how to decipher writing and eventually to write themselves. Each stage builds on what came before. Ensuring that children have adult caregivers who consistently engage in serve and return interaction, beginning in infancy, builds a foundation in the brain for all the learning, behavior, and health that follow.
Audio's on.
Alright, so you've looked at this very short snippet, and you saw in this that in the beginning when this baby is born, even before then when they are in the womb, they actually can hear sounds. And it is important for you as a parent, or if you are guiding parents, to tell them to listen to different types of music, things that would calm them. Please do remember that if you are upset when you are pregnant, it takes about 48 hours for that negative hormone that you produce to go out of the baby system as well. So it's important to calm yourself as well as baby. So if we looked at this video together, you saw the axons and the dendrites in the brain. Now, every time you repeat something, it's like a little car that's driving on a dirt road. Every single time. And that dirt road is, it's as if it has grass, and then this car drives and it makes an indentation into the grass, and the more that road is traveled, the more it is laid down as a highway. And this is one of the things that I know in brain gain as well, Steph. We're talking about language development. Is it possible, because they were talking about pruning, where you take away the ability of this child at the end of the day then to learn further? Is that really true? Because this is old science according to me. In brain gain, what have you found? If you've looked at all of the spectrums that you've been testing and working with, what is happening in a child's brain, and how is it possible to correct this?
Charmaine, yes, over the past couple of years, neuroscientists have done a lot of research on epigenetics and neuroplasticity. So in the past, we believed that once the connections were made, you have to really look after them, because as they die off, as you get older, that's it. You can't make any new connections in the brain. Now, the neuroscientists have proved that wrong in the last couple of years, and we've really seen amazing work where remedial action can actually turn around things that have gone wrong in the brain, in the child's development, in language development, motor skills development, midline crossings, and things like that. If you pick it up, it's not the end of the world. But the thing is, you cannot leave it. You need to address it. So as you were saying now, there are connections that are made in the brain. We have neurons that need to connect with each other. So the messages have to go from the one neuron to the next, and if the connection is not made, then the message will not go through. And I'm sure that parents and teachers have noticed that when children come into the school, I'm talking to teachers now, you will see that the children are of the same age, more or less the same background, but some children excel and other children just don't. And one of the biggest reasons, which I'm sure you're going to touch on, is the fact that they were not stimulated enough and they were not exposed enough. Like you were talking about the riding with a car on a grass field. The more you drive on the same place, the more you will have a track that is laid down. And we find that children come into schools, children go into high schools, and somewhere along the line the track was not laid. And it's not the end. It's not, we don't have to accept it. And so many people say, ach, ek is maar net stupid. That is not it. We can restore. We can get the brain to make connections right up until the day we die.
Okay, awesome. That's great to know. So please do remember, you can ask questions in the chat, so that if you want something specifically answered, then we can look at that for you. So if we look at those connections, the one thing that really stood out of all the research that I did regarding language development is that children are more susceptible, and they can actually learn languages much quicker before the age of 7. It takes a lot more effort after the age of 7. If any of you have tried to learn a new language, you will know this. I looked at a study that was done in America, and they took 2 babies, and they actually placed these 2 babies with their parents in a room, and they had a natural voice on the one side, and when this natural voice spoke, the light would light up and the baby would turn their head. And on the other side, they had a computer-generated voice, or what would come across a television screen or on a screen. And it had a different pitch and sound. And it also had a light. And when this played, it was natural for the baby to turn their heads to the side of the natural voice.
Wow.
And this is why I'm saying that connection that you as a teacher have, or you as a parent have with baby, is much more important for the development of language. I also would like to show you the building blocks of communication. I used a pyramid, even though blocks are like the Lego blocks above, because it starts somewhere and it goes somewhere. And very many times in our school system, the system forces us to flip it around. And then there's an imbalance in the system. So we are expecting things of a child that they are not able to produce at that age. And this is where developmental milestones come in. Certain children are able to do things at a certain age on average. Now, something that I'd like to know also regarding this is, how did you come up with the statistics that you are using within Brain Gain? Because I think they used the same system when it came to finding a norm or a standard. So how did that work?
Right, Charmaine, at Brain Gain, we specifically work with concentration levels and cognitive levels of a person. And what we did is I personally was involved in the testing. We tested over 5,000 candidates throughout our research spectrum. And we determined on average, for example, what can a 5-year-old boy do? What can a 5-year-old girl do? Because it's not the same. Girls develop at a different ratio or rate than what boys do. So we played the numbers game. We got as many tests in as possible, and then we started analyzing that to get to the norm. You often hear of research out there, and then when you ask them your norms data, it's like 30 or 40 candidates, and I feel that is not representative of the broad population. So it's really important when you look at research, you need to make sure that it is representative of the population that you're working with.
Okay, great. So you will see, if you look at this figure that I've placed here, at the bottom we have a solid foundation. If you would really like this child to have the ability to learn and to be able to develop optimally to the best of their ability, the foundation must be very solid and sound, so that anything that comes across their path that throws them a little bit does not topple the whole house over. So in the bottom section of our pyramid, opportunity. Now, it was so interesting to me to look at babies that had been recorded with their parents, and we looked at language development, and we saw that on average, a general household where there was some type of learning, if that parent had matric or further than matric, they would communicate more with the babies in their care. Then somebody who was very busy the whole time and did not have that background, that educational background. So the daddies would have all these explanations why the rocket and the fuel injector was connected just to a toy thing, because that is what they know about. It's their field of expertise. And where in the other scenario, we had children that, I'm going to give you an example. In the one scenario, this mommy is British and she can speak fluent English. In the other scenario, we have a child who is with a nanny or a day mother, and English is her fourth language. So her English isn't broken English, but the amount of words that she uses is less than the mommies. So if we talk about Jane and Joan, if we take Jane and mommy talks to Jane and tells Jane about the turtle in the sea, she would say to Jane, there was a sea turtle and it submerged itself under the waves. It went deep, deep under the waves, and it swam amongst the beautiful fishes and the coral reefs. On the other hand, the nanny or the caregiver who does not have that amount of vocabulary in her arsenal would say, this is a turtle, he is swimming in the sea. So if you just compare the two, and the more repetition came on this side, the more the axons and the dendrites fired and the more connections were made. So it's crucial that everybody has a rich type of vocabulary when they are speaking to children, and that they constantly speak. They must constantly talk to the kids, because the more they hear it with that repetition, that little car is driving in the brain from the ear to auditory connections are made, and there's a connection to broom, 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 this is a car and this is how it looks. So sometimes we wonder why we play the games we play with children. When they're younger, we do the peekaboo game, that type of thing. It comes inherently, we don't know where it comes from, but if you go back and you look at the science in it, each one of those have a specific milestone. There's a time frame that it's necessary for the brain to develop that those games were implemented. And that's one thing I want you to put a pin in. We must play games. So the next one is the reason why we speak to the children. There mustn't be a reason. You must speak to them constantly. The following one is motivation. If somebody likes doing something, they would do it more frequently. So if you talk to this child about anything that's exceptionally boring, and you don't show pictures and you don't expose them to sounds and anything, they get bored and they get distracted. So you need to motivate them. The following one, and I will also ask our technicians to share this slideshow presentation with everybody, is taking turns. For us to have a dialogue, I speak, you speak. For children, that doesn't come normally. You need to teach them to take turns. So in your preschool class, you could use a beanbag or a ball, and you could say what you want to say. Now ask Stephanie to say what she would like to say. So that taking turns is important. It's the starting point for dialogues. Then shared attention. If you do not focus on what you are doing, they will not focus on what they're doing. Many times a child in your class did not hear what you were saying. They were busy with something else. And now suddenly you want them to produce something. It's not going to happen because there was shared attention. Their attention wasn't there. So you need to have keys that could capture the learner to say it's time to listen. And songs work exceptionally well for that. Eye contact. If you want to keep somebody's attention, you look at them and they will look back. So teachers need to keep eye contact, and then listening. If they tell you something, listen. Or if you tell them something, they won't. So it's a bit of a give and a get. Understanding spoken language comes much later in the child's development. It starts with small sounds, utterances. We call it baby brabbling. And then it goes into words. These words become phrases, and then they are put together in sentences. And actually, if they take an MRI of the brain, they can actually see how these things are developing and how many dendrites have grown around the language center in the brain, which is amazing to know. The using of phrases and sentences, they actually listen to pitch and tone. I had a little boy in our active English classes, and he is Afrikaans, and I was teaching English. And he came to me, knew English sounded differently. There was a different sound to English, but he couldn't speak. He could say hello. That was it. And he came in, and he knew I had a container with little chocolates in. And he did something very good, and he came to me and says, Teachie, kin ik asseblief chocolate kry? And that was how English sounded to him. So pitch and tone is very, very important. And then the sounds of speech. If they don't hear people talk, they will not speak with intonation. So they'll not go higher and lower and louder and softer. So you have to teach intonation in your class. You are going to say, let's sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star like Daddy would. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. And then like Baby would. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Because intonation shows them when a sentence starts, stops, where a story has a beginning, a middle, and an ending. So teachers that are reading, please, you have to read with some enthusiasm. I think some children sit there and wish their teachers would just stop reading. So revisit this. Go and look at how you can zoosh up and hype up the way you read in your classes, because that teaches the child speech sound. So those are the things that you need to get laid down between or before the ages of 5 and 6 years. By then, they should be using long, complex sentences. Now, how do we know all of these things? You're a mommy yourself, right? So you've got kids. Around about 6 months, what happened with most of them, if you can think back?
In terms of language?
No, in their body, what happened?
They were much more aware of themselves and things going on around them, and they started acting more socially. They were interested and they wanted to start communicating.
Definitely, they were looking to recognize your facial expressions,
yes.
right? And they also developmentally started either rolling over or sitting up. And then by 1 year, around about then, all of them started pulling themselves up against something. And then by 2, they started potty training. Those are developmental milestones. Now, why then is it so important for a teacher, if they want to teach, or an ECD facilitator, or a mommy for that matter, or a brain gain therapist, to know the developmental milestones that are connected to these ages? For what reason would you need to know developmental milestones?
Charmaine, I just want to make a comment on that. My job is working with children with concentration issues, and the majority of the children that come to us are normally in the foundation phase, going from nursery schools into primary schools, and they simply cannot cope with the pressures. And one of the reasons that I've picked up in my forever that I've been doing this is that children skip milestones. Teachers and parents think it's very cute. My child never crawled. She got up and she started walking. What you don't realize is that a milestone was missed, which caused some of the connections in the brain not to happen. And the same with language development, the same with midline crossing. So many things can go wrong if you don't know the milestones, and if you skip one. If you think, let's accelerate this, let's get faster, and and say, oh, my child is so cool, she's 4 years old and she can read and write. Which is incidentally not a very good thing for those who think it is.
Definitely. So it's almost like connecting the dots.
Absolutely.
In the brain, you are plugging in all of these different dendrites to another dendrite to make a connection that would remain there, that this child could go back to and refer back to later. So if that connection was never made, the circuitry in the brain can't take the message where it needs to go. So you get forgetful people, you get people who don't have the ability. It's almost like putting a plug into a socket but never flipping the switch. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so communication is key. That interlinking of how you react to the child and the child reacts to you. Your tone, your pitch, the way you express yourself. I think in COVID, specifically in this time, it's really been tough because people were so emotionally overwhelmed that they didn't even want to practice emotions in their classrooms. We were taught, when we were studying to become ECD facilitators, we were taught specifically that children don't inherently know when I have water coming out of my eyes, I am crying. They don't know that this means I am angry. It is something that you need to teach them. They need to connect your facial expression to a feeling.
Yeah.
And also a word. I'm sad. I'm happy. So please, because of COVID, a lot of things have happened, but good practice remains good practice. And repetition helps the child connect with their inner emotions and their abilities. And also language.
Yes.
If she needs to express on your report card, you now want to say this child cannot express their emotions to an adult or to the teacher, but have you taught that? Remember, it's not to say it's happening at home. We read just now that environments are different. People's training levels and skills are different. So you as an educator have to impact the child in a positive way, and you have to repeat things. And I am so thankful you said that reading and writing, it's a developmental milestone. We don't feed a baby steak. They will choke. We give them milk. So why are you giving small children alphabet letters when they're not even supposed to be doing alphabet letters? They must just recognize sounds. Rather play games like I spy with my little eye, something starting with an S. And then they have to look around and it's a shoe. So that the connection is made, that's a shoe before there's an S at that age. So the development here is crucial to know. If you're a 2 to 3 year teacher, how many words must my child be able to say? With their fine muscles, tip of finger to end of elbow, how many things must they be able to do and how? Which muscles are working? And then large muscles, all those big muscles, what comes first? Catching the ball against the body or away from the body, or a hard or a soft ball? Because how can you teach and work with children if you do not know what you have to expect from them? So I'm going to move on to the next slide.
Charmaine, can I just ask some of the questions coming through on the
Please,
chat
yes.
now? Somebody asked now, what is the latest age that a baby must crawl? But I'm sure there are many questions. Where can parents and teachers find the milestones?
There are many milestones out there. You will see that they divide them into 4 or 5 categories. I do believe we have a slide. If we can go to it, Christian, I'm thinking
We'll get to it.
we'll
then.
get to it a little bit later. But there's physical development, and then there's emotional development. It's a little bit more on, if you wouldn't mind going there. You will see little blocks on the right, just a little bit more. There we go. These are your developmental milestones, and these are how they are divided. They are divided into physical development, fine motor skills, cognitive development, that's your brain, language development, emotional development, physical development, large motor skills, and then mathematical skills and problem solving. They've actually now separated from the others. There are so many websites that have this information on. I would like to invite you guys. You will see in the top right hand corner we have our logo EduXSA. Right at the end we're going to share a screen with you. You can become a member at EduXSA, and you will get a lot of content for free as members. That is something that we do post, and we have had a team of specialists work on the developmental milestones to help with the new curriculum in South Africa, the ELDAs, the early learning development areas. And this whole team it included a psychologist, a doctor, 2 educational specialists, occupational therapists, so people that understand the milestones have gone and looked at all the statistical information, and they've compiled a developmental milestone that could work. But you can't wait for something. If you're not a member yet, make Google your best friend. Go and look, developmental milestone, development of milestone, and look at the age group that you are working in. First, understand what you're working with. I said, find the child where they're at, or look at the age before and the age after. If anybody has studied, this is something that you should be doing and should be researching within your studies. I know all our ECD level 4s have had to do that, because you cannot teach if you don't understand the milestones. You don't know where to get the child and what they are doing and so on. So there's a lot of new research out on the developmental milestones, but you can see there's still a golden thread going through where you can see a certain age is able to do something specific.
And I think the importance is don't skip a milestone.
Yes, don't skip a milestone. And people have asked me, so what comes in your progress report? If you go and look at an ECD progress report, it actually just outlines what the milestones for that age group was within term 1. These children are supposed to stay inside a theme. We want repetition, repetition, repetition for at least 2 weeks. That is what the elders ask of you, that you don't do 1 week we're on the farm and 1 week we're at the shops and 1 week we're wherever. You stay 2 weeks on the farm. Now why? I said enrich your vocabulary environment. If they now start understanding, let's say transport, that this is a helicopter, this is how it looks, this is how it sounds, this is how many people can be in a helicopter, it's in the air, then they are able to relate to when you speak and you say the word helicopter. Before then, this is a foreign object. They don't have a word in their vocabulary to connect to helicopter. We kind of think that everybody should know what a helicopter is. That is not true. They don't. If you don't show your children on your theme board what you are going to teach them, more than 89% of them statistically do not know what you're talking about. You will talk about supper, but they can't make the connection. You will talk about an elephant, and some of them have never seen an elephant or read a book about an elephant. So it's your responsibility at the beginning of your first week to introduce your theme, to introduce your new vocabulary, and understand that the children don't all understand what these words mean. Give a sound to it, put a song to it, make them understand, show pictures of it, and then that should progress. Otherwise, you sit with this scenario, and I've seen this in many preschools. The 2 to 3 year teacher, beautiful planning. These are my eyes, this is my nose, this is my head, this is my mouth. 3 to 4, these are my eyes, this is my head, this is my nose, this is my mouth. And then when we get to 5 to 6, they are supposed to have a very enriched vocabulary, but they don't, because we didn't talk about the eyebrows and the eyelashes and the cheekbones, and all of that just was left out. So for language development, the first week is an introduction into your theme and the concepts. The second week, you are actually repeating to make that brain path so concrete that it's not going to fall by the wayside. And if you miss those milestones, later on you just have a lot of connections in the brain. There's just a word hanging around there. But the light switch was never flipped. Nobody understands what that word really means.
And then one of the questions that came up now, or not just a question, a comment that was made, if you skip a milestone or if you mix it up, it actually causes cognitive and emotional issues later on when they go to primary school, correct?
110% correct, yes. A child, we say zip your crocodile. Basically what happens is in the bottom part of your brain, I think they call it the oldest portion, the medulla oblongata, I believe. Isn't that the crocodile at the bottom? The brainstem and then just above it?
Yeah, no, they've got a different name. I'll get to it now, but you can go on with your story.
I'm trying to think now. But in that portion, children are their emotions are overridden by what you want from them and how they are feeling. So that's the first thing in a curriculum is a child must feel safe, secure and loved. That is how language develops, that connection. If they don't feel that, then they're all over the place. They're disruptive, they hurt and harm the other children in the class, they break and damage things because they don't feel safe and secure. So definitely, emotionally, it's going to affect them if there's a milestone missed. You can think for yourself, if a child hasn't been potty trained properly or was potty trained too soon, 9 out of 10 times they wet their beds when they're around about grade 3. And nobody can understand what the connection is, but they never finished that milestone. That plug was put in. I must use the toilet. Now, this grade 3 child is going to the toilet and all's going well. They can wipe themselves, they can pull their pants down, pull their pants up, do their zipper, everything. But at night, that hasn't been sorted yet. So it reverts to them wetting their beds. So doing things whenever you feel like it as a teacher could do more harm than good. You are supposed to stick to the milestones and then see if there are any red flags. If you have a child that is supposed to be walking, and every child is walking around about a year and 3 months, a year and 6 months, a year and 8 months maximum, put it there, and you've got a child that's not yet standing up, that child needs help. There must be a reason, either a physical, emotional, or cognitive reason, while the connection hasn't been made, that I must lift myself off the ground. So that is why milestones are so important, because they show those little red flags. And not just red flags. We have children that are exceptional and they are gifted. And those children need more stimulation so that those dendrites and axons can keep on growing and connecting. And if you are keeping them back, it is also not good for them. So in our schools, we normally have a midstream where we have a child with remedial issues that we'd like to refer because we see they're behind. Then we have a child that is on par with their peers, people in their age group. And then we have a child that is doing exceptionally well and needs to be enriched. So that's our enrichment learner. So if we as educators can always teach as if it is a kinesthetic learner, I hope you're going to be able to explain that, then we will not miss the milestones. And if we know what is expected of an age group as a teacher, we are able to connect activities to that will enrich the environment, cause the child to feel safe because they can also participate, and then cognitive, emotional, and physical learning will take place. So what is the story with what I just said?
Okay, so the main thing that I take from that is exactly that, emotional development. Our primitive brains at the back, and I still haven't come to that, our primitive brain has been programmed so that when you are in a dangerous situation, you have one of a few options. You fight, or you flight, or you just do nothing, you freeze. Okay, so what I do when I'm in a situation that I'm extremely uncomfortable of or nervous of, I get out of there as quickly as possible, and when I'm out of the situation, I deal with it. Many children, their first reaction is, I'm fighting back. I have to fight to get myself out of this. And this is an automatic reaction. It's not something that you think about. If you are emotionally well developed and on par, you will be able to look at the situation, override your primitive brain, because the primitive brain kicks in and it overrides everything. When I get my frontal lobes to work properly and the child is on par with development, they're actually at a position where they say, okay, the teacher is shouting, but you know what, she's not shouting at me, so I can relax. and not immediately revert to fight or flight mode, and you can actually put things into perspective. And that happens if you are on par with your development. And many children sit with anxiety today. I think, and I'm going a bit off topic now, but I think the whole COVID pandemic has really led to a lot of children being extremely anxious, a lot of anxiety out there. And we need to stand still for a moment and just look at this and realize these children they need help.
I also think that we're only going to see what's going to happen in the future a year or two from now, and how this really has impacted us. I see that our technician is queuing us, and he's asking, he just wants to swap out a battery. So we're going to take a 2-minute break. After the 2-minute break, please join us on the same link. We're just going to continue, and then the battery will be swapped out. Looking forward to seeing you there. Great, so that was a quick battery change, so we are energized to go on. For me, it's very tough, Stephanie. I'm a kinesthetic learner, so I need to move, and I like things to happen quite quickly. I mentioned just now that if you teach as if you were a kinesthetic, you were teaching a group of kinesthetic learners. What is the difference then? Because we've got children in our class that are visual learners, they learn by seeing. We've got auditory learners or auditive learners, they learn by what they hear. And then you've got the kinesthetic little Okie, he has to see it, smell it, taste it, touch it, feel it before. So how would that impact the way we teach them then? How could we do it different?
Okay, so in our nursery schools, in general, we teach our teachers there that you should, in anything that you teach them, you should involve visual stimulation, auditory stimulation, and let the children move. When we hit primary school, that becomes difficult, because if you think of primary school, we get 30 children coming into a class, sit down and listen. And it's a huge jump for children, especially for the kinesthetic learner, because your kinesthetic learner is the one that needs to move. Something in their body needs to move in order for them to learn. So it's not necessarily I have to taste it, or I have to smell it, or I have to hear it, but their bodies need to move. And these are normally the ones that end up at brain gain, and we get told that my child has ADHD, they are hyperactive and they cannot sit still. And we have a test that we do, and where I can actually test this, and we pick up in many cases children that actually get labeled with the label of ADHD because they cannot sit still, are kinesthetic learners, which just translates something on their bodies need to be able to move for them to be able to concentrate. So now we typically get the one that rides on the chair, and the teacher says, hou op die stoel ry, dit is nie 'n perd nie. So there are a few things that we can do. It's also those children who always want to go to the bathroom, or they're always standing up because they simply cannot concentrate if something on their bodies don't move. And the sad thing is our school system don't allow for this. I'll be speaking on Wednesday. I'll be speaking on movement for the brain, or development of the brain, where it's really important in your early years that the child move as much as possible for connections to take place. And one of the things I'll be sharing with you is many children that actually are that cannot sit still in class is because their brains are trying to make connections that were supposed to happen when they were very, very small. But unfortunately today we have a situation where children get put into a snug and safe car chair, and they get parked in front of the television, and we restrict their movement, which causes many of the brain connections to not happen. So you can join us on Wednesday for that. I will share the details. But movement is so important, and many children struggle because they are not allowed to move in the classroom.
You will see in the new curriculum that's come out that sign language is one of the criteria that they've added, and they've also added STEM. And I did a lot of research on why would you take a preschool teacher, a preschool learner, and teach them sign language. And I realized that once the body moves, as you justly said, once the body moves in a certain way, the brain has something, not just a sound, to make a connection. So if we, for example, would say, I love you, they move with their entire body. So it's easier for them to make the connection when I say, what is love? And you will see with many of them, if you start singing a song, I love you, they will do this inherently because they remember that you said, I love you. So sign language is also a part of language, and we're talking about language development, and you actually learn better by moving. So incorporating very small movements and repetition of those movements will help the child that's struggling with language to learn it faster.
Absolutely.
Okay. So how language strengthens the pathways in the brain? The development of language starts at birth and it continues for many years, but most of it is concentrated, as I said, in the first 5 years of a child's life. Neurological development, that's all those axons and dendrites and how the brain grows, is actually a physical development as well. It's like there's a new cell and a new little arm and a new little arm. So the more you stimulate this brain with language, the more they grow. It's like tickling them, and then they start spreading. And they have the opportunity then to make extra and more connections. So the more rich your language is, the easier that is stimulated. So they will start off with small words, mama, papa, and you will see after me doing this, you actually over-exaggerate with babies. You can't say mama, papa, because it doesn't show how the word is formulated and linguistically, where you form it in your mouth, at the back, on the tongue, in front, by the teeth. So it's important that you, especially you in the baby care divisions, that you play those repetitive games, those, what sound does the lion make? The lion says, roar, all over-exaggerated sounds to show how the sound is formed. And then also, once again, louder, softer. I've seen in the past, I don't know if you've experienced this, we have very clever children, but they have a very soft voice. And they have to do an oral in class, and they come to you and they're like, teacher, can I go to the bathroom? They're brilliant. They've got a good language, a good vocabulary sense. They can string the words together, but the voice quality is poor. And this should be one of the milestones that's on your progress report cards as well. Because this child's going to be using language for the rest of her life and career afterwards. So what could you do? If you took a ball and you taught them a distance away to throw the ball at a target, and then you give the ball a name, you can call it ball if you wanted to, and they have to say the word ball when they throw it, like they're throwing their voice across the room, so it hits the end of the wall on the other side. So in the beginning it's going to be ball, ball, and hopefully if they progress, it's going to be ball, ball, until the volume goes up. Where do we find these things? You Google them. If you don't know, take a book out in the library. If you have a child with a problem in your classroom, go and find out what you can do. Contact specialists. Speak to people that know about the topics. If you care for that child in your care, you will do everything you can to help them resolve the problems that they're having. But be careful, you're not a doctor, you cannot diagnose them. Have you had that a lot, that teachers actually come up and diagnose the children?
I have, and it's very, very sad, because when we do the actual testing, yes, some of them were spot on and they got it right, but so often it was a misdiagnosis. And I understand, because we sit with very, very large classes and the teachers sometimes just simply cannot cope. But we have to realize that it's the child's future that we are talking about here, and rather refer. If you don't know, find out, refer, and get to the root cause of the problem. One of the issues that we have is we want a quick fix on everything. It took the child 7 or 8 years to develop up to where he is when he goes to grade 1, and whatever was missing there, it took time. You cannot expect to fix that just like that, and many parents expect to fix it with a little pillicky. And I honestly do believe that is not the route to go. You know, if I have backache, I don't end up in hospital tomorrow for a back operation. We go through the process. The doctor first looks at what it might be, sends me for physio, gives me pain tablets, gives me a Voltaren injection or whatever, and ultimately, if nothing else works, then we go for the big guns for surgery. And it should be the same. If you have a child who is struggling at school, first go to the root cause, what went wrong, and 99.9% of the time it is because a milestone was either skipped, missed, accelerated, because it's like a house that you're building and you've left out some of the bricks. The first bit of pressure on that brick wall and the whole thing falls down. And that is exactly what happens. And I just want to, before we finish, Charmaine, I see we are actually running out of time, want to just ask you to just comment. One of the questions is, children that get sent to school too soon. I'm talking about big school now. I'm talking about going into a phase that they've not been adequately prepared for. I know there was a drive at one stage. It was a ridiculous drive where from the top, I won't mention names, who actually suggested that 4-year-olds can go to grade 1 already. Your thoughts?
I know exactly what's happening in the curriculum. I am aware of exactly what every milestone is that needs to be met within the elders, what you have to do for a child to move on. And I'm going to give a mathematical example here. If I take a 4 to 5-year-old learner and we just look at maths, we are still talking about triangles and circles, and we are talking about solid colors. So we're looking at red, blue, green, yellow. Now, because of age, you want to take this child and put them in grade 1. If I go and look at the grade R curriculum, we're now RR 4 to 5, the 5 to 6 curriculum for grade R, you will see they're starting to talk about cylinders, and they're going into a 3D dimension. It's not flat anymore, it's not 2D anymore. They actually now are talking about hexagons and octagons, and they are blending colors and shading things. Things are turquoise and teal and light purple and mauve. So you take this little one, which has now turned 4, and you put them in grade 1, where they are supposed to know sequencing, and they're supposed to be able to identify almost like trigonometry. They need to know the angles of this and that, but they don't even know that if I take a flat piece of paper like this, that's 2D, okay, it's 2-dimensional, and I roll it up, that was a rectangle. I on the one side have a circle, but if I do this, I have a cylinder. So how can you take a child that does not even have the vocabulary? I told you guys, you can't talk about something you don't know. That language has not even been given to the child, so they are going to fail in grade 1. Doesn't say they'll fail their year, because they catch up. But they would have done so much better. And that's what I want to tell parents out there and teachers. Your motivation must be when you speak to your parents to say to them, please don't move them on. This is why. There's going to be a pothole, a gap, like you said, in the wall. Something is missing. And that is going to mean maybe 1 year less school fees, because that's how I think in my head. But you are going to send this child for remedial, for enrichment, for extra classes, because they are going to fall behind. Very, very few of them will make a success of it. And then you take another child. My son is born, he's an adult now, he's born in December. I decided to keep him back for grade R, so he repeated that. And he excelled from there onwards. If I compare him with one of his best friends, he's born on the 21st of January. There's a year difference between them. Have you seen the difference between 6 months in a baby? So it's unfair towards the children to move them past the milestones that they haven't reached, because you are going to have potholes and you're going to come back and you're going to have to correct it. And then you're going to see occupational therapists, and you're going to see filial therapists, and you're going to have emotional issues because my friend can and I cannot. It's so sad parents don't understand that. It's not just pushing. Where are you going? You're going to have them for such a short period of time. Treasure every moment you have with them, and go through the phases. And that child will be well-rounded, and they will be successful at school. Otherwise, they're going to hate school. They're going to be bullied. They're going to at the end of the day, maybe become depressed. And then we're going to sit with children that need to be some of them want to kill themselves in grade 1 or grade 3 because they can't meet.
The pressure is too much.
The pressure is too much. They can't measure up to their friends in their classroom. And it could have been avoided.
Absolutely. I am so sorry to have to call a halt because we have run out of time. Charmaine, I want to really thank you today for a very, very insightful topic. I think what I take away from this is that milestones are there for a reason. They're important, and a lot of the issues that we sit with children at school could have been avoided if we didn't think we were clever and smart to make them skip that. I just want to mention that Charmaine is head of an organization called EduX SA. They do offer short courses and webinars and all sorts of things where you can learn more about milestones. You can learn more about children's development, etc. And our technician is going to share with you on the page the website that you can visit to find out more about short courses, etc. And you can also go and visit our Brain Gain website at braingainworld.com if you are worried about your child's concentration levels or cognitive development levels that we can test. And I always say, if we can get to them early before it becomes an emotional issue, because all of this is fixable. And we should address that as soon as possible. So I really want to thank you, Charmaine, for sharing your knowledge with us today. Years and years of experience. I know there's a lot that you still wanted to touch on, but we'll do another one.
We'll definitely do. Thank you, Steph.
Thank you for everybody that joined us tonight.
Thank you, Christian. Will you go to the last slide, please? As Steph said, we also offer training for people who aren't qualified. So if you are busy working with children, please note we are moving from DSD to the Department of Education in April 2022. There's a lot of things happening. The new SOP, Standard Operating Procedures for preschools, is out, so we'll be posting that on our EduX SA portal for you to access there. Please, crucial for us, there's a few pointers that you can use for vocabulary and stuff. This whole slideshow is going to be available for you so that you can go to it and see what the pointers are that you can use. And then make use of Brain Gain if you want to do school testing, school readiness testing.
Absolutely.
They have an amazing, people have been asking me the whole day regarding that. They've got an amazing test that they do, and you can see if this child is cognitively and emotionally ready to move on. And they are nationwide. You can visit the website that Christian's going to show you now. And then from there on, we know that you are going to be okay if you just follow the milestones, as Stephanie has said. Christian, please, if you'll then go to your advert on the websites.
Thank you, Charmaine. You can go and visit our websites, braingainworld.com, for cognitive testing, or if you are interested in studying more in this, you can go to eduexperts.co.za, or if you want to join the eduxsa.org platform for short courses and webinars, you are more than welcome to do that as well. Thank you so much, Charmaine. Have a blessed evening, and I'll chat to you soon again.
Keep well, everybody. Bye-bye.